everybody, to a special episode today where we are going to learn from one of the greatest pitching coaches of all time. Leo Mazzone is with us. Hello, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm kind of bored right now, missing baseball, but we had a great revisit of the '95 World Championship and had a good time with that. But I'll be glad when this thing's over and baseball can be played in our big league stadiums with the fans.
I think we were all watching that, including Kaleb Davis, your protege, and the pitching coach at Furman. What's up, Kaleb?
How we doing, man? Thanks for having me on.
No, thank you for what did your buddy call this? You were the brains behind this, right?
Yeah, that's what he said. I don't know about all that. I'm just kind of sitting here watching you guys go at it.
We also have Rob Friedman here, an analyst for ESPN and MLB, better known as PitchingNinja and the creator of Flatground app. What's up, Rob?
What's happening, Josh? How you doing, man?
I'm good. I'll get it started here. Leo, first question. Was Sid Bream safe?
Oh, yeah, by a long
Definitely.
shot. I mean, he was safe by a long shot considering he was carrying a piano on his back. No, he was safe. And Bonds, they wanted Bonds to move in and move over to the line a little bit. And he didn't move.
Really? Well,
Yeah, that's what I heard.
by the skin of the cleat, I believe was the headline.
No. It was about 3-4 inches.
Yeah, he was there, no doubt.
Yeah,
Okay,
no doubt.
so Leo, what is it about your relationship with Kaleb Davis that he was able to get you here with a couple of guys like me and Rob?
Well, I think I met Kaleb here in Anderson when he was a pitching coach at Anderson College, and we struck up a friendship. And I was looking for somebody to pass my stuff on to, just like Johnny Sain was looking for somebody years ago to pass it on to me. He picked me, and I accepted. There was a lot of people that didn't accept it, but I did. Because knowledge is intimidating, and I've had a lot of people that I've tried to give my information to, and they get intimidated. But Kaleb was hungry for information. We struck up a friendship, and then he had an opportunity. So we started talking pitching all the time, and then he had an opportunity to go to Furman, and Coach Harker at Furman played up through AAA ball, and we all struck a relationship up there. And so he's got all my information because the information that's being put out there now, I think, is not conducive to healthy arms, and that's the thing that I was most proud of. And I think you're going to see Furman University. You are seeing them do the same thing where nobody breaks down and nobody misses starts. And that was my history in the minor leagues and the big leagues. So I'm glad that Kaleb is a good friend of mine, and Coach Harker is a good friend of mine, and I couldn't pick a better person to give all my information to than Kaleb.
Kaleb, we're in a completely different era now than when Leo was coaching. What is it, though, that he was doing that has been extremely useful to you in bringing it into this generation of training guys?
Yeah, I mean, different era, but whether it's, 1990 or 2020 or 2050, the greatest currency any pitcher can have is outgetting. And Leo's guys did that as good as anybody. And so as a pitching coach, regardless of what level you're at, if you can pick the brain of a guy that's the mastermind behind some of the greatest outgetters in the history of our sport, you're going to do that. And, Leo touched on it, but the thing that drew me to him and what he did the most, when I first met Leo, I was only 4 years into college coaching. And, I gauged my success as a pitching coach, based on the amount of velo my guys may have gained from a September in the fall until the end of the season in May or June. And, I didn't realize that the biggest part of that was health and durability. And, when I had an opportunity to get a chance to talk with Leo and pick his brain about some of that stuff, that was the thing that drew me to him the most, was how consistent his guys were able to, as he calls it, go to the post to do their job every outing. And I think it was some 500 and some unbelievable amount of consecutive starts in a row where his guys were able to go to the post, so to speak, and do their job. And for us, that's all I can ask. Obviously, I tell my guys at the end of the day, and we're here to develop you, but we can't do that if you're spending the majority of your time in the training room. And so first and foremost, how can I keep my guys healthy? And, Leo has the recipe book as good as anybody in the world to do that.
Hey, Leo, you mentioned learning from Johnny Sain, and I've gone back. I mean, I don't know if you probably don't follow me on Twitter, but I am a big Johnny Sain guy, and have put up a lot of his stuff. And I agree. I think he was ahead of his time on a lot of things, from the Sain spinner that he had
Right.
to teaching spin axis.
Yeah, right. Spin rates, now they call it.
Right. As well as things like throwing programs, not making pitchers run just for the sake of running. He said that that was a lazy way. It was because coaches didn't want to teach anything, because
Right.
they made their pitchers run, and to treat pitchers like they're first-class citizens. What type of things have you learned from Johnny Sain?
Well, you mentioned that a lot because I know a lot of the pitchers that came over, like Maddox said, I love this place. We throw a lot and we run a little.
Right.
And, you know, but and the thing was, Johnny was so far ahead of his time, talking about spin rates and talking about backspin on a fastball and changing the direction of the spin on a breaking ball, a throw and turn breaking ball. All these theories and changing speeds was his number one priority, changing speeds. And he always used to tell me, you get hitters out 5 ways: stuff, movement, change of speeds, location, and motion. All 5 play a part in getting somebody out. So he would take me over. He had an RV in spring training, and he would take me over to, because he didn't want to stay in a hotel. He'd take me over to his RV, and we would sit there and fix cornbread beans and sip on a little vodka and talk pitching every night. And this man was well beyond his time. And he was, and other managers, a lot of managers didn't like him. They were intimidated by him, you know. And because he went to the Yankees and he was there for 3 years, and they, you know, and it was Whitey Ford and Ralph Terry, and the list goes on and on. He was there 3 years, then he goes to Minnesota. The same thing happens in Minnesota with Jim Cotton and Mudcat Grant and all those. Now he goes to Detroit, Danny McClain and Mickey Lolich and Earl Wilson and Joe Sparman. And I did a seminar one time for John Sherholtz in Atlanta for the minor league organization when I was in the big leagues. And I was talking about when Sain got to Detroit, you know, and what they did. And this one scout said, he was a 20-game winner before Sain got there. I said, yeah, but when he left, he was a 30-game winner, you know. And so, and I thought about that when Stan Kasten asked me, what pitcher did I do the best job with of all the great pitchers? I said, Greg Maddux. He goes, what? He goes, Greg Maddux was good when he got there. I said, yeah, and he remained good too. Maybe got a little bit better. So I have so many parallels with Sain. But what happened was Johnny always has the opportunity to have pitchers in a 4-man rotation. So, but the baseball world went to a 5, thinking that that's going to protect the pitchers and keep them healthier over the long haul. I've pitched in both when I was in the late 60s and 70s. I loved starting in a 4-man rotation. I stayed sharper, because you develop a pattern of pitch, off, side session, off, and pitch. Well, then the baseball world went to a 5, and because they wanted to give the pitcher an extra day of rest. And I decided on my own I was going to have that pitcher throw that extra day of rest. Only we were going to control the effort. And this is what Sain taught me too: more often, less exertion. If you went more often with less exertion, then you were able to get on the mound and practice your craft more often, get some touch on the ball, you know, change speeds, move it around. And so Johnny taught me that. So I did it on my own, and the pitchers ended up loving it in the minor leagues. You know, the managers didn't care what I did. Hank Aaron was my boss. He said, I hired you to take care of the pitchers, take care of them any way you want. Well, guess what? Then I gained a reputation of those guys staying healthy. Well, then when '86, when Bobby Cox came in, Bobby Cox said he was turning an offensive-oriented organization into a pitching one. Who's going to take care of the pitchers? Well, and this was in front of the entire organization in the big offices up in Fulton County Stadium. And I told him what I wanted to do. And a couple of the managers said, well, Leo has a track record here with us of no breakdowns, no sore arms. And so I explained what I was just telling you. And there was 4 pitching coaches in there. I don't need to name their names. And one of them stood up and said, well, I think he talks to Bobby and the general manager in the front office. He goes, I think as much as Leo has his pitchers throwing, that they'll run out of gas by August. So I said, can I ask you a question? And he said, sure. I said, well, when I have my pitchers on the mound practicing that extra day at 60 feet 6 inches going downhill to a catcher, what do you do? He said, well, we have flat-footed throwing in the outfield. And I said, well, why don't you explain to me the difference then? He said, well, the difference is they'll have a tendency to throw too hard when they're on the mound. I said, that's what the hell they pay you for, is to regulate the effort. So therefore, if you can't regulate the effort, you make your living at 60 feet 6 inches going downhill. I had a pitching coach from a former pitching coach say, well, what do you think about a side session where you put the guy 3 feet in front of the mound and throw 30 pitches? I said, number one, what are you putting him 3 feet in front of the mound for? And number two, why are you counting pitches on a side session? You might be done before that or maybe a little bit after that. But why aren't you on the mound going downhill? So those programs come into play, and Bobby was convinced then that he said he liked my programs and that they were in place. And then we all started, he stayed in close communication with me from 86 to 90 when we both went on the field together. And a lot of things happened in between there, but it was basically a 5-man rotation where you pitched, took a day off, had 2 side sessions, took a day off and pitched, so that I could be able to keep them just as sharp in a 4, yet healthy in a 5. And it worked out great.
Leo, can you talk a little bit more about your relationship with Bobby and how much autonomy he gave you? And then what would your advice to guys like Kaleb in terms of how does a pitching coach find that right match with a head coach to make sure that, they can do their job and feel like they are doing their job?
It's not easy. I was with a lot of managers and other coaches who I thought were totally wrong. And I thought Sain taught me well. Bobby Cox taught me well. Jim Beecham taught me well. Bobby Dews taught me well. But also I was around a whole bunch of coaches that taught me how not to do it. That was just as important to me as the guys that taught me well. But the ones that taught me well all had one thing in common. They were teachers. They understood people. They could communicate. They knew when to be a little forceful. They knew when to give support. And when I got with Bobby in the big leagues, Hank Aaron told me when I became a minor league coach, he says, Leo, I don't care what you do, take care of the pitchers. When I got to the big leagues with Bobby Cox, guess what he told me the first day I was there? He said, Leo, I don't care what you do. You take care of those pitchers. You be with them, get to know them, learn them, know everything about them. And he said, I want you to remember one thing. Just because a pitcher's in the big leagues, don't take for granted that he knows what he's doing. And from then, we developed a great relationship. Our relationship started in 1986 through AA, AAA, A ball. And Bobby and I both loved the minor leagues. I was in it in the minors for a long time. And so I understand what everybody goes through in the minors. But in the minors then, the manager and the coaches pitching coach had freedom to do what they wanted. Now you forget it. It's being dictated from up top, And then Bobby and I became very close and had a great relationship. And he had, besides my father, he was the biggest influence on my life as anybody in the face of this earth.
I love that, because I think one of the things that you just mentioned is things that people are coming around to now. It used to be that for a long period of time, we were trying to baby pitchers, not have them throw and then ramp it up.
Right.
And it's turning out, and same thing where we've done measurements to prove kind of what you just said. So you said flat ground is as stressful as is potentially stressful as throwing off a mound.
Well,
So
now they're saying it's more stressful.
Right, exactly.
The front foot hits sooner. I mean, you got some help on the mound. You're creating a little help going down the hill. That's why it's on a hill, for crying out loud, So who's flat-footed throwing? Give me a break.
Yeah.
The only time we ever did flat-footed throwing was when we were playing catch, just getting loose. Had nothing to do with flat-footed throwing. Should never, ever take the place of a side session on the mound.
Yeah, and I think it helps a ton with just not only arm, but also developing feel.
It's huge. See, that's your Sain guy. That's Sain talking there, a little feel and touch. So Maddox used to come up to me and go, hey, Leo, let's get on the bullpen, do a little touch and feel. I said, no, it's feel and touch. And of course, he would do that.
Although with Maddox, you never know.
Yeah. But, I mean, even when he got over there, we'd already been to the World Series twice, but, he wanted to learn what we did, and I wanted to learn what he did. So basically, when I'm coaching pitchers, I always told them it's an exchange of ideas. I want to listen to you. Tell me what you feel, and what do you like and what don't you like. Then I'm going to tell you what works, and maybe it will work for you. But with the track record that we had, anybody that came into the organization in that time was going to go with it because there was too much success. But, you know, young guys like Steve Avery, how was he able to do that? Well, he had killer instinct and he trusted a change of speeds at a very young age. So, but here's the ball. And I didn't teach Avery one pitch. They said, what did you didn't teach Avery a pitch? I said, no, my job was to help him. He's a #1 draft pick. My job was to help him keep what he has. Well, see, I was around managers who looked at #1 draft picks in the minors and said, well, you can't pitch like that. And he hasn't even pitched an inning yet. So they want to tinker with him. If somebody comes out of the minor leagues and he's had success, then let him pitch the way he wants for them, you know, why he was signed. Now he's signed. Well, leave him alone. If he's having success, leave him alone.
I love that. I think a lot of coaches fall in the trap of putting their fingerprint on
stamps. Stamp or fingerprint. Yeah.
And these guys got there for a reason. I know there's a story about you and John Smoltz where they were trying to change John Smoltz and have him throw a certain way. It's like, well, how do you throw a ball?
Yeah. Well, you know what? When we made the trade for John Smoltz, Bobby said we made a trade for John Smoltz. We traded Doyle Alexander. Well, #1, Doyle Alexander was there to help Detroit win a pennant. And Smoltz was part of going to be the rebuilding process with Glavine and Kent Merker and Tommy Green and Mike Stanton and Pete Smith and Steve Avery. And so we had all this, getting this lined up. And so Bobby says, take Smoltz down to the instruction league and you go on the backfield with him and go one-on-one. Don't worry about all those other pitchers down there. He said, that's your job every day is to be with him. So we're down there in his first bullpen session with him. And after 4 pitches, he goes, no, that ain't right. That ain't right. I said, what ain't right? I said, I didn't say nothing. And he goes, well, my front side and da-da-da-da. And I went, would you give it a break? He said, well, in Detroit, I said, you're not in Detroit. I said, would you do me a favor? I said, would you wind up and throw the ball the way you would like to? And he wound up and threw the ball. And I said, that's one of the most beautiful deliveries I've ever seen. He didn't believe me. Oh, no. I said, do it again and repeat it. Because Smoltz, here's what Bobby said he came with. A fastball, a great arm, loose arm, no command of a fastball, no breaking ball. He'd won 2 games in AA or something like that, or A or AA. So all of a sudden, he starts throwing the way he wants to, right? And he's hitting the target. I mean, he's hitting the target every time. And I'm going, well, he's not wild, you know. I mean, it doesn't look wild to me. And then I introduced him to a throw, turn, and pull breaking ball, which was Johnny Sain's signature breaking ball, where you would throw it first, turn it, and pull it in. And he says, show me how to do that. So, I said, center the ball in your hand and spin it. I said, now turn the ball, just turn it and pull it and spin it. And it turned the corner a little bit. And we turned the corner, turned the corner, turned the corner. I said, now turn this one as much as you want. And it went, woof. And I went, gee, you know. So anyway, so we started doing that 2 days on, 1 day off, 2 days on, 1 day off. Then when he started cranking it up, it was every other day. Now we build him up to pitch an inning in instruction league. He strikes out. It's no contest. Now we've got to build up to 5 innings, and it's no contest. So Bobby calls me and says, Leo, he says, how's Smoltz doing? I said, exploding fastball when he's throwing strikes with it. I said, one of the best breaking balls I've ever seen. He goes, oh, that can't be right. No. And I said, why don't you come on? He's pitching Thursday. Why don't you come on down and watch him throw? He goes, you know what? I'm going to do that. So he flew in. He flies in. He goes, don't tell nobody I'm coming in. I'll be up in the press box behind. Nobody will even know I'm here. I don't want him getting nervous. He went 5 innings and struck out 8 with 1 walk. So he looks at me and he goes, Bobby looks at me and he goes, how did you do that? And I said, I let him be himself. And that's all I said. And Sparky Anderson asked me the same thing when we went down to Detroit later on when we were playing in Lakeland. Hey, Mazzone. I said, yeah, Sparky. He goes, how in the hell did you figure out Smoltz? We couldn't. I said, I let him be himself. Sparky goes, smartest thing I ever heard.
That reminds me of a story that Kaleb told me about you. It sounds like this initial kind of bullpen session with you really sets the tone for your relationship with these guys. Kaleb, you told me the story about Greg Maddux that really struck you. Can you tell that story? And then, Kaleb, how have you deal with new guys every year? Like you have a whole new staff almost every other year. So what was that story you told me about Leo with Greg Maddux, and how do you approach, what you've learned from Leo about setting that, that stage right away with them?
Right. Well, I'll do my best job telling a story, and Leo can clean it up if he needs to. But the way Leo told it to me was obviously they get Maddox over in this over here, and obviously he's done everything that he's done in Chicago, and he's good, and he's got a big reputation, and he comes over in his first side session with Leo, he's throwing, and he turns around and asks Leo, said, well, what do you think? And Leo says, well, not very impressed, it's just okay. And Leo, and he just kind of flips him the ball and, walks off and comes back the next day and basically says, I just kind of wanted to see if you were going to BS me because of my last name, or if you were going to actually be willing to coach me and, and go from there. And I think that's the thing that obviously has drawn me to Leo is he's here to coach. He's here to develop. He's here to help these guys become their best self. And, we're in a unique advantage at the college level, where at the professional level, obviously coaches are having some sort of input, I would say, in who's getting drafted and so on, or at least then, we're choosing who's coming to play for us. We get to handpick our guys. I mean, as pitching coaches, we're the ones on the road handpicking, so to speak, our high school guys that we get an opportunity to coach. And just like Leo said, for us, if I'm going to go out and recruit a guy and try and convince him to come play for me, obviously there's something that he's doing already that I like enough to where when he gets in, and I tell all my guys this, when I'm recruiting them and their parents, when they ask about development, everybody wants to know about development and throwing programs, stuff like that. So listen, if I don't think your son is good enough to play, then I just wouldn't recruit him. But since you guys are here in our office, obviously there's something he's doing right now that's already good enough. So when we get them in, we just want to, first and foremost, always with everybody, is keep them healthy. And then B, from there, just continue to try and develop and hone their craft and what they've done up until the point, whether they're 17 or 18, whenever we get them, just try and hone it and continue to make them better. I mean, at the end of the day, and this is what I was telling you about a little bit, Josh, over the phone through some of our talks, is you've got a guy like Leo who's got all this, reputation, and he's done this and done that, and probably the most successful pitching coach in the game, and he's just easy to relate to. He's a guy that when he gets his guys on the mound, he talks to them. But more than talking to them, he listens to them. And that's a big part that I think so many of us, including myself at times, miss, is just as a coach, you're not always the one talking. You got to be the guy listening sometimes too. And, these kids could be 18, but they come in and they've got confidence in what they've done. You've brought them here. That gave them a boost of confidence. And you get in and want to change everything. And all of a sudden they start second guessing they've done for the last 14, 15 years of their life, and they don't know where they are. And I think our job is just, listen, we got them here for a reason. Now let's try and A, keep them healthy, and then B, continue to develop them from there. But I really, I think it's that simple. Obviously, there's some more X's and O's that go into it. But at the end of the day, if these guys don't trust you enough to talk to you and explain stuff to you, and you be willing to listen, then you're just not going to be able to develop them at any level, whether it's at the college level or big leagues.
That initial meetings that you're talking about, I'm going to give you 3 examples that not too many people know about. Marvin Freeman, we make a trade for Marvin Freeman. He's not having any success in Philly, right? I said, come on down the bullpen. I want you to throw some fastballs, but only at about a 80 to 90% effort. He comes out firing, and gunning. And I said, apparently you don't understand what I said. I said, I want an 80 to 90% effort. I said, I don't want 100. He goes, well, that's all I know is how to do that. I said, I know. That's why you're over here now. That's why Philly let you go. He starts throwing at 80 to 90% and the bottom's falling out of the pitch, the sinker. I said, did you see that? He goes, yeah. I said, would you trust that in the game? He goes, I don't know. I said, if you do, you'll have a lot of success. And if you don't, you'll be in the same boat that you are right now when you first got here. I said, but I know it can work. I said, that ball's sinking like that, you can tell a guy it's coming. When we got Jarrett Wright threw 95 miles an hour, was let go by San Diego, didn't want him. Well, Jarrett Wright, I took him down to the bullpen. I said, JW, I said, just throw these fastballs. I said, I want them all down and away, righty to righty. I said, throw them all down and away, but only give me about an 80, 85, 90% effort, not 100. He had a bad recoil, and he was erratic in San Diego. And he's hitting the target every time without the recoil. And I said, would you trust that in the game? He goes, well, hell no, I wouldn't. I said, well, if you don't trust that in the game, you're going to be erratic, you're going to recoil, and you'll be all over the place again, and you'll end up doing what happened in San Diego, what happened here. I said, but if you trust it, and he trusted it, started banging strikes with it. He became our go-to guy. Marvin was a setup guy with a good sinker. Jared ends up setup guy the first year, second year, 15-game winner, gets a big contract in the Yankees. And the other was John Burkett. And they asked John Burkett, they said, how come you had so much success under Mazzone? Tampa didn't want you. He goes, well, Leo told me my slider sucked and throw fastballs when it was slider situations. He goes, and everybody, nobody knew. He said, my 85-mile-an-hour fastball looked like it was 90. We went fastball change and a big curve, and he owned the down and away strike. So those are just examples of everybody that we came in contact with some initial meetings, all based on commanding the fastball down and away and being able to control your effort.
Yeah. So from a recruiting standpoint, kids are taught, and obviously it jumps out at people when they see velo. Everybody's, the 95-mile-an-hour guy, all the colleges are on them. What jumps out at you when you're looking at a pitcher other than velo? Obviously, I know that if you were ranking things, velo would be way down there, but kids are viewing it as table stakes to get a college offer. How do you get them beyond that? What jumps out at you as a pitcher? What makes you say this is a guy that I want to work with?
Well, what I look for, guys, whether it's college or pros or whatever, is life on the pitch. And now, if it comes out of the hand in a smooth fashion and the ball jumps, has life on the pitch, whether it's movement or straight and explodes at the base of the cutout at home plate, I look for life on a pitch. I mean, this term velo, I didn't even know what it meant till later on in my career. And you know what you can do with velo? You can shove it. Because what's happening is these kids are being told that. And then they try to reach up to hit that radar gun number because they're told they don't make a team. Well, that's why 52% of Tommy John surgeries now are under 19 years of age. So I look for life on a pitch. And if somebody can show me that they can make a pitch and it looks like they're hardly working, I love that. If I see somebody throwing a pitch and he's grunting and groaning with everything in his body, I don't like that at all.
Yeah, no, I mean, you said it in a different way that I would say it, but it's the exact same thing. I mean, I like a guy that's quiet over the rubber. I mean, to me, that's the number one thing, a guy that can be quiet in his delivery. And like Leo said, it almost looks like he's asleep on the mound, but the ball has late life at the plate. And that, that's one, those guys are going to be more likely to stay healthy, first of all. And then those are going to be guys that you can actually work with. They're easy. Now, you can work with all guys, but those guys are going to be a little bit easier because they're able to repeat their delivery, but they have a good understanding of what their delivery is like. And the next biggest thing to me is head movement. What a guy's head movement is like coming down the mound. If he's all over the place and outside of his body, because Leo teaches, he's big on alignment, and that we're big on that here, being able to throw our fastball wherever we want. Obviously, the glove side strike, so down and away, whether you're righty or lefty is first and foremost. You got to stay on that pitch longest. But then being able to be sneaky quick, as Leo says, in on guys, whether they're righty or lefty. And head movement has a lot to do with that. It doesn't matter where your foot's going. If your head's running away from the baseball, we're just not going to have a lot of success. So those two things are the biggest things for us, is just an opportunity to, stay quiet over the rubber and then, your head movement. And then we can do a lot of the things that Leo's taught me to teach guys.
Well, Kaleb, it's such a benchmark though, right, for Division I recruiting, and it's what's put out there a ton. So how, where's the balance to it? And then how do we change that culture? Is it even possible at this point?
Well, sure. I mean, we're in the position we've got today, and I think a lot of it is driven by video and social media and stuff like that. And listen, I think a lot of that stuff is fine. If a guy sends me an email and says, "Hey, listen, I'm 6'3", 195, top of 92." Okay, obviously I'm going to be more intrigued to open that email than the guy that sends me one and says I'm 5'10", 170, and I'm 81, 82. Now that guy can't get outs, but the guy that's going to have a little more life on his ball is going to have a little more room for error, so to speak. But it doesn't mean that guy's going to have more success. There's just maybe a different ceiling there for that guy. I think at the end of the day, each coach is his own person. I'll just tell you, I've coached plenty of guys at the college level that have all kinds of arm talent. in terms of how hard they can throw a baseball, but can't get outs. And then I've had the exact opposite of guys that didn't have a ton of arm talent, but they were bulldogs between the ears and they were coachable. And I listened and they listened and we got a lot of outs, you know? And so at the end of the day, I think a lot of it's just going to be on the individual coach, guys that are willing to step out on a limb, so to speak, for the guy that doesn't necessarily throw 90 miles an hour. I mean, I think for some reason the 90 mile an hour, you know, you know, you see kids all the time, hey, first time 90 mile an hour club. It's just that stigma that, you know, I got to get there. And you don't. I mean, and at the end of the day, it's just a coach being willing to work with the other guy that still have success with that other guy, and not necessarily, you know, every college coach wants to sit there and rattle off, hey, here's my top 8, you know, 93, 95, so on and so forth. And, you know, and that's fun to be able to say. But at the end of the day, what I want to be able to do at the end of the year is look back and say, well, we won 40 games. And what's my best way to get there, you know? And so for us, I think that's the way you got to approach it. And again, it's each individual coach, you know, and right now, you know, college coaches are kind of driving this bus because these are the guys that we're going after. These are the only guys we're talking about. You're seeing kids in high school post 5 ERAs and they're committing to Division I schools, and kids in high school posting 2 ERAs and they're going D2 and JUCO, you know? And so we're kind of the ones driving the bus, but at the end of the day, I think it's confidence in oneself as a coach to be able to work with guys like that and be able to help have those guys get some success.
Yeah, I think to some extent it seems like no one gets fired if they bring in a 95 mile an hour guy, because it's like, well, then it's up to the pitcher. He didn't throw well. He didn't work hard enough to be good. If you put out your reputation to bring in an 82 mile an hour guy who gets outs and he doesn't for some reason gets outs, then it's on you. You just staked your reputation on it, which is kind of unfair, but that seems to be the way it is.
Well, you can't coach scared.
Right. So I think so. Along those lines, how important is pitcher makeup? Leo, you coached pitchers that to me seemed like they had a bunch of different. I mean, Maddox was much different to me from Smoltz, right, and from Glavine. Glavine's a kind of cold-blooded guy. Yeah. And Smoltz was. So how important is makeup? What do you see in a pitcher, and how do you bring that out of him as a coach? Like how do you optimize that? If
you're spending a lot of time with him, you get to know him, and then you get to know you know, I got a degree in psychology and I never went to college, because your approach to the pitchers based on their mentality and their makeup, and that determines your presentation to the pitcher. And I did that even when I'm talking A ball, double A, triple A, rookie league, whatever. I just when you take the time to know somebody, number one, you got to know what you're talking about, and you know they find that out real quick. And number two, when they see themselves improving, then that trust factor jumps in, and then you can pretty much do anything you want with a particular pitcher, you know. But you have to spend time with them, and that time's being spent in the bullpen, throwing more often on a mound, going downhill. It makes a full circle. So when you're spending time with them, you get to know them, and when you get to know them, you know they're trying to get to the big leagues, and I want them to get to the big leagues. You know, and there's some buttons you have to push one way or the other to get the end result that you want. And that's just being with the individual, you know. It's like when we got Russ Ortiz from San Francisco, right? When Russ came over, he says, I said, Russ, what do you think San Francisco got rid of you for? I said, man, you're pretty good over there. He goes, they said I walk too many people. I said, I don't give a damn how many you walk. He says, you don't? I said, no. He won 22 games. He still walked 80 or 90, but I didn't care. He won 22 games because he didn't care. You know what I mean? You know, I mean, it's just adapting to the individual. Glavine, stoic, stoic figure, never give in, mentally tough as it can be. Smoltzy, emotional, bouncing around, and Maddox, cerebral, greatest control I've ever seen anybody in my life. And when Maddox left at the end of his career with us, and I knew he wasn't coming back through that door, I told him, I said, I want you to know that you taught me more than I taught you. And he goes, yeah, but you gave me some good tips. So everybody's different, you know, but you have to spend time with that individual. This velo stuff and how hard, let me tell you something, guys. There's a lot of lousy coaches out there. There's a lot of coaches that don't have the right information. I'm talking there's a lot of good coaches, and they spend their time with the teenage kids. And there's the reason I affiliate with Furman is Kaleb and Coach Harker. They're the ones that made sense to me when we first initiated conversation. I've had conversations with a lot of college coaches, and I knew they weren't listening, and they were just doing it out of courtesy.
I want to go back a little bit to some of the stuff that you both were mentioning about listening to your players and communicating. And I'm actually going to try to. I'm not the pitching expert, Rob, and the rest of you guys are. So I'm going to try to focus on a couple of the other positions. Leo, first of all, was Javi Lopez underrated or not respected on the national scale? Maybe I think he should have been. And what were you learning from him? How important was he to your success? And how did you guys have to work together?
Well, Javi Lopez was a great catcher. And his setup, if you watched, I was talking to Kaleb about this, if you're watching some of those Braves World Series games and you're locked in behind home plate, his setup was as good as any setup I've seen in all of baseball. And, and he had tremendous power and was a great kid. And, my relationship with Javi said, let the pitchers, whatever they want to do, I'm here to help. So, our goal with the catchers was have a good presentation to the pitcher, have a good presentation to the umpire so that we could get more strikes. Okay. And the other one was that I used to tell them was when you put that finger down, you're making a suggestion. All right. I want the pitcher making the final decision. Now, the reason I want that is not because they're going to be in sync over a period of time, but why I wanted that was because you wouldn't have a pitcher coming in and saying, why did you want to throw that pitch? I'd rather have a pitcher make a mistake with a pitch, but throw it with conviction than a pitch that you made a mistake with and didn't want to throw it. So you make your selection and throw with conviction. So, and we always talk, and just with Javi would say, Leo, he goes, and he knew when somebody was starting to lose it a little bit or whatever, and he was just a great catcher. Wouldn't your catcher need to be, I mean, it's an extension of you, right? They got the better view of what's happening. How much time did you spend with the catchers, maybe without the pitchers even present, and working with them? Or that didn't happen? They just got it done? That didn't happen. My time was with the pitchers. And then the pitchers were going to dictate what was going on, period. The period was, hey, set up, catch the ball, but now it's great when they get to know the guys. We had great catchers, Johnny Estrada, Charlie O'Brien. Javi was almost a Hall of Fame catcher, maybe is, with power when you combine everything, and one of the greatest individuals you ever want to meet in your life. And there wasn't any problem with anything. We had Pat Corrales work with the catchers. I worked with the pitchers. But, you know what I mean? So, Pat would do a great job with the catchers, understanding what he wanted to do with the pitchers, and I was on the other end. So, basically, you stay in your own firing lane, you know what I mean? There's too many people that stick their nose in where it doesn't belong.
I'm sorry, what about even if it's just communication, then I guess with the other coaches, like infielders, understanding what the pitcher's ball is doing and how to maybe make little shifts themselves and things like that. Like, what was the communication going on between you and the other coaches so that the guys on the field in other positions did know, how to play best for?
Well, you had Jimmy Williams was the third base coach. He also positioned our defense. So Jimmy knew our pitchers and what they threw and the defense. But the bottom line was this. Bobby Cox told the pitchers, he said, if you're on the mound and you look around and you don't like where somebody's playing, you have the option to move them. That way the pitchers can't come in and say, hey, where are we playing this guy? See what I mean? So that was eliminated. I didn't want to throw that pitch. That was eliminated. So Bobby gave them the option, if you didn't like it, move them. Maddox was the greatest. He could set up a defense better than anybody. He could almost tell the guys the ball was coming to them. He's the only one I ever seen do that. And he'd look at somebody and say, "This ball's coming to you," and it would, but he was so, he's a different bird, a Hall of Fame bird too. So anyway, so Bobby told the pitchers that Jimmy positioned the defense, and so therefore you had everybody working in unison. It wasn't just me going, okay, the defense go here, and the catchers. No, Corrales took care of the catchers. I took care of the pitchers. Jimmy Williams took care of the defense. And Bobby Cox took care of it all. And if Bobby Cox didn't like something, he would come to you and say, "What are we doing here?"
So how do you develop that for coaches? So I see a lot of coaches that want to take control over pitches, calling everything. And I think it detracts from, number one, it gives pitchers kind of excuses to blame the coach. I totally agree with that. And coaches feel like they have to have control over everything. How do you develop that in a coach where they have that feel to allow a pitcher to be himself? And I mean, what advice do you have for
Well, it's common sense. You know, it's common sense. I mean, you know, when you work for somebody, you know, you got to be honest, yet you got to be supportive. You got to be able to push harder when you're going well and give more support when you're not, and let them know that you care. You know, and that's not. But I don't need it in like a brown nosing way or whatever, thing like that. Just they need support. They want to get better, you know, and we want them to get better. But the thing is, it makes a full circle again. If you're healthy, you have a chance to get better. If you don't, you ain't gonna, you know.
I think it's so easy for coaches to push when things aren't going well, and you sense that fear in a coach, and it actually makes things spiral. And then when things are going well, no matter what, they're like, hey, you know, they're slapping everybody on the back. And it should be, I mean, what you're saying is the reverse.
Yeah, it should be the reverse, you know. And Sain always told me about that. He said, man, guys need support. They don't need somebody hollering at them and getting all over them when you're not going good. You know what, you can push a little harder when you're going good, you know. But when they're not, I'll give you a good example. Steve Avery had a very difficult time in 1990 when he first came up. And he got banged around in a game in Atlanta, and Bobby said, Leo, I want you to go in the clubhouse and spend the rest of the game with Avery. We don't need you out here today. We're fine. This is early in the ball game. He said, let's go in and spend the day in the clubhouse with Avery, the night. I said, okay. So I go in the clubhouse, and Avery's sitting in his locker, you know, pretty down. So I went over to him, you know, and I said, hey, Steve, I said, you feel bad, don't you? He goes, yeah. I said, let yourself down, let your parents down. You let the team down, you know, what a lousy day, huh? He goes, yeah. I said, well, let me tell you one thing right now. I said, when you get accustomed to your environment in the big leagues, I said, payback's going to be a bitch for the rest of the National League. And I said, I'll tell you another thing. We'd go to war with you any day of the week. I can tell you that right now. We'll go to war with you any day of the week. Now let's go get a beer. Anyway, just an example, fantastic. You know, an example. You know, or going out to the mound and telling Smoltz to get his head out of his butt, you know. And he says, well, Leo, the catcher just told me that. I said, we don't need to hear it twice. I'll go back in.
I wanted to ask you that about mound visits. I feel like mound visits at a college level, you know, I can understand what's happening there. What are they different at the pro level? Like, are you going out there treating them like a kid sometimes, saying get your head out of your butt, or what might be the difference there?
Well, I think it's the same. You adapt to the personality. Kaleb's going to adapt to his pitchers' personalities. You know, it's the same. Very seldom would I ever go out there and talk strategy. When I went out there, I wanted to look in the pitcher's eyes, look at his face. You know, I was already watching his mechanics to see if he was showing me any signs of fatigue. You know, and what's his mental approach, et cetera. And you learn a lot with a mound visit like that, whether the guy's tired or not. And I wanted to find his physical. How he felt physically and mentally, and usually you got that information out of him, you know. And so,
do you think we're taking too many mound visits these days?
I think it can be overdone. You know, it's we didn't make a lot of mound visits. You know, one time, for example, Maddox told me, he said, I've had 4 starts and you've never come to the mound. I said, well, what do you want me to do? Make something up? He goes, no. He said, but it gets lonely out there. I need somebody to visit me. And so he says, I'm going to look in the 6th inning tonight. When I look in, come on out and pay me a visit. You know, and we're playing the Mets. I went, God, he knows he's already going 6, right? 6th inning, he's got a shutout going. We're ahead 3-0. He looks in after 1 out in the 6th. And Bobby goes, Leo, get your butt out there and make sure he's all right. So I go running out there, and I said, he says, how do I look like from in there? I said, oh, you look great. I said, you got a 3-hit shutout going. Yeah, you look great. He goes, well, good. I'm glad you came. He goes, I don't want to talk to Chipper. He said, I don't want to talk to the umpire. He said, and the catcher don't speak English. He said, so I'm glad you came out for a little, give me a little breather. And I said, is there anything else that you need before I go in? He goes, one question, coach. I said, what's that? He goes, does the bullpen need any work? I said, no, go 9. And I turned around and left. So, but see, I mean, so a lot of those mound visits, and it's not like Bull Durham either. Like, that's over exaggerated. Mound visits to go out, and I can tell you this right now. I saw it all over the baseball when I was there. A lot of managers had sent the pitching coach out for a mound visit because they were just getting the relief pitcher up and they were killing time. That never, I can count on one hand the 15 years I was with Bobby Cox that he ever told me, Leo, go out and kill some time. One, maybe 2-3 times in 15 years.
Speaking of mound visits in bullpen, the closer role, Kaleb, is a lot different or at least it looks like a lot different at the college level, right? It's not so much a specialized thing, and what has Leo been able to teach you that you're able to transition to the college level in terms of that closer role, since it is very different from the pros?
It's very simple. Leo told me, heck, maybe within the first conversation we ever had together about this actual topic, he said, you know what you do? You get all your pitchers together and you ask them, is there anybody here that doesn't feel like they can get 3 outs? And, you're not going to coach a single kid at the collegiate level that doesn't feel like they can get 3 outs. There are some years where you just have a guy, where you just have a guy that feeds off that adrenaline, he feeds off that situation, he wants to be in the game when the game is tight, and you may run to that guy more often than not. At the collegiate level, though, more often than not, though, man, you're just rolling with the guy that you have the most confidence in, so going to get you those 3 outs. And, and I think it's funny because it's not some, new theory or new thought. I mean, you see it in the big leagues every year in the playoffs where World Series, Game 7, Game 6, Max Scherzer goes out for the 9th inning or the team's best pitcher goes out. Any of these guys can get 3 outs, Now, you're not going to see somebody like that in June go out for the 9th inning, but when the game's on the line, and for us, we don't play 162 games, and our conference series are our big weekend. So when it comes down to the 9th, we're going to run out there whoever we think gives us the best opportunity to get those 3 outs. And it might have been the guy that started for us on Tuesday night, or it might be our closer, whatever. But it's going to be the guy that we think can get 3 outs the quickest and get us on the bus and get home.
Leo, you guys jumped around late 80s, early 90s with some closers until finally Mark Wohlers, John Rocker stuck for you guys. What made those guys work for you?
Well, I think that they had great stuff, and they relished that attention. They loved that. For example, Alejandro Pena saved a bunch of games for us, right? And they asked him, "How come you're saving games? You never saved games before." He says, I only got to get 3 outs. He goes, I can do that with my fastball. Kerry Lightenberg saved 30 games for us coming out of an independent league. You know why? He didn't care whether it was the 9th inning or not. And then we had Stanton and Merker could close out some games for us. Greg McMichael with a great changeup could close out some games for us. But Wohlers had great stuff. I mean, he threw a legitimate 97 or whatever, not like today. Anytime you see the radar gun today, subtract 5. Just subtract 5. And because they don't time it coming across home plate. And then Wohlers had a great split, a great breaking ball. So, he was lights out. For example, the other night when I remember a conversation I had with Bobby in game 6 of Glavin's 1-0 game. So Wohlers is coming in to pitch the 9th. And I said, Bobby, I said, if Lofton gets on, he's going to steal second and steal third. He goes, I know that, Leo. He goes, but you know what? Wohlers is the only pitcher we got that can strike out the side.
Baerga is 0 for 3. Left center field. Grissom on the run. The team of the 90s has its world championship.
See what I mean? And Rocker was just, he loved it. I mean, he loved the crowd. He loved the attention, but he backed it up with good stuff. Hard fastball. And you know what he could do that nobody realizes? He could control his breaking ball and make it smaller or bigger, depending on the count. And for 2.5 years, he was tremendous. The only reason he just, he hurt his arm. I mean, he blew out. And when you watched him throw, it's easy to figure out why, but that you weren't going to change that. That's for sure. So they were great closers, but we had a lot of great closers. I mean, but Wohler's pure stuff, and it was tremendous.
So you have guys with just ridiculous stuff and ridiculous command. Which do you think is, number one, the most important of those two, the easiest to teach? Is it easier for you to teach stuff, and how can you teach command?
Command's the most important thing they have. Location is most important. And how do you teach that? By having side sessions down in the bullpen. And working on command, especially the alignment with our fastball, it was huge to Maddox, and then it became huge to all of us. And here's the thing too, if you have a reliever, we had a program where, I looked around the big leagues, and you can you're hearing Johnny Sain and me speak the same language, because we were kind of rebels. And I would look around the big leagues, and I thought, when does a reliever ever work with a pitching coach once the season starts? Well, they don't, So I told the relievers, I said, if somebody doesn't get in the game for 2 days or warm up, don't get in the game or warm up, and for 2 days don't do nothing, I want you to come down the bullpen and have a little session with me before the game. And so anyway, I had an executive come down and tell me the next day, he goes, hey, I saw you working down in the bullpen with Steve Bedrosian. I said, yeah. He goes, well, he's a reliever. He said, and what if he had to pitch that night? I said, that's what we were preparing for, that he would pitch that night. And when he did get in, he'd be a little sharper and have a little feel for his pitches. Gee whiz, it's not that difficult.
And does all that transfer? So at Furman, I assume we're throwing regularly.
So for us, yes, our guys throw off the mound a good bit, and for us, that is, if I were to put together a list of top 5 things that Leo's brought to me, that's up there. If not in the top 3, it is definitely in the top 5. Because at the college level, sometimes you get so handcuffed with what you should do with your relievers, because you've got the mandatory off day, then you got the travel day sometimes on Thursday, so you're not able to do, and then you got class. So, you kind of get handcuffed sometimes with your relievers, and those guys are the guys you're getting most frustrated with sometimes, because middle of the season, you're counting on these guys to get some of the biggest outs, and they're not sharp. And the reason they're not sharp is because, well, a guy threw 3 innings relief for you on Tuesday night, so he didn't throw on Wednesday. Maybe he didn't throw on Thursday, and then he's your best reliever. So you got Friday night, the opening night of a big conference series. So you don't want to throw a bullpen with him there, because if it's a 1 or 2 run game, he's probably going to come in relief. And you score 8 in the 4th, and you're up. So, well, we're not going to use him tonight. So, then you get in a situation of maybe it's been 4 or 5 days before this guy's thrown last. For us, it's hard in stone rule. You never go more than 2 days without touching the rubber as a reliever. So if you throw on Tuesday night, 3 innings in relief, you're off Wednesday. If you want to throw on Thursday, I give my guys that option. If you want to throw on Thursday, because typically you don't ever play on Thursday. If you want to throw on Thursday and not throw pregame, that's fine. If you would rather wait and get that extra day, we'll throw pregame, during home BP. And those are my best bullpens, because guys, it's so much easier to regulate their effort pregame, because they know that, all right, well, there's a chance I'm getting into the game tonight, so I don't want to blow it out. But as Leo says, I always approach my guys, hey, listen, throw in the pen right now what you think you need to do to be best prepared for the game tonight. And once I say that, I don't have to say another word during their entire pen, because in their heads, they already know, well, hey, listen, coach already told me there's a good chance I'm coming into the game tonight. So they back off a little bit. And, Leo mentioned it too. We don't, it's never a pitch count for us. A guy might get on a bullpen and throw 13 pitches. I don't know. Sometimes they might throw 22. I have no clue. It's once they feel good about their stuff, all pitches, both sides of the plate, and they get out of there. Sometimes it's 3 minutes. So for us, that's one of the most important things, that and the way we set up our starters and the sense of what they do between starts is probably some of the most important stuff he's taught me.
Leo, things are going well, right, in the 90s. You have the best pitching staff. You're the greatest. But how for you did you each year evaluate yourself and figure out where you want to improve and how you were going to do that?
I just wanted every year approaching everything in a very consistent manner. I'd say that being consistent is one of the most important things a coach can be. So every year I didn't try to reevaluate anything. I was happy with how everything turned out, win, lose, or draw, because I know that we put all our thought process into it, our hard work. So to me, you couldn't tell that when we came to spring training or had our early throwing programs, whether we won the World Series or lost it the year before. We were preparing for this year. And, we had a saying, your most important pitch is always your next pitch, and your most important outing is always your next outing. Well, my most important year coming up was the same as it was last year, but it's a new year. There may be a couple different pitchers that have a chance to make your staff, but be very consistent in your approach. Be very consistent with your throwing programs, your running programs, how you want things done. It never changed for 15 years.
What about the guys themselves? If you have pitchers and they develop and then they change, or maybe they get older and the velocity is not there, the movement's not there on certain pitches. Like, how often did you find yourself at the beginning of the year needing to make adjustments with some of these guys and tweak the way that who they were going to be that season?
Well, I think number one, once again, if they were down on velocity, I didn't really care. I didn't care. And the adjustments being made were working on command, control. And here's what you got to remember. A lot of guys, when their velocity went down, quit trusting their fastball and start trying to trick a hitter. Well, as soon as you do that, you're going to be in trouble. So we emphasized 80% of our practice time on fastball command, regardless of velocity. That answers the question earlier when they said stuff or command. It's command, location. And I remember Bruce Suter and Ted Simmons getting me together one time when I was a young pitching coach. They said, would you rather have what's more important, stuff or location? I said, stuff. They said, no, you're wrong. It's location. And then I started learning, as I went. This is when I was very young in the minor leagues as a pitching coach. And they sure as hell were right. It is location. And, you're talking about Hall of Famers giving you this information, or Hank Aaron giving you that information, or Eddie Matthews. You know what he said to me? He goes, Leo, he said, you make sure you tell your pitchers that we can time a jet coming through that strike zone if we see it often enough. Okay, gets back to saying changing speeds. See, it makes a full circle. So every approach was the same every year, being very consistent with what you do. And if you have to make an adjustment, you make the pitcher think it's very minor.
Is there any technology that you like today? So say there's, I get a whole sense of old school stuff. Is there anything that spin rate, anything that you use today that you think, hey, this would be awesome if I had this back in the day, or nah?
You know what I think? I think everything they're doing now, we did, only they word it differently. They make it more analytical. They make it sound more like whatever it is. We did the same things. We did the same things. They are saying, we put it in layman's terms. They put it in analytical terms. It's the same stuff.
Going back through old videos, and if you see the Sain spinner, that literally is the concept of spin access. So it is right. Like everything old is new again. Do you feel sometimes it's done to, some of the analytical terms are done to create a barrier to make it say like, hey, we're doing something different now, and you guys can't keep up? What you were doing back then is no good.
Yeah, that's their own ignorance if they think that.
Leo, I got some questions for you that came in from other college pitching coaches that filmed them. So if you don't mind, I'm going to pop them on here, let you watch them and answer a couple of those if that sounds good to you.
Sure.
Leo, Josh Jordan, Associate Coach and Recruiting Coordinator at Duke University. My question for you is this. If you were a pitching coach today at any level, how would you manage the misconception of velocity increase and velocity gain to the overall development of a pitcher?
Basically what you do is, there's one way. Arm strength is built on throwing more often with less exertion. Okay. If you want to go long toss to build, it can't be from one foul line to the other foul line where you have to exert every gut in your body. You can't pick up, there's no quick trick to picking up velocity. Okay. A pitcher grows into his velocity, but you can't improve velocity unless you throw a baseball. But when you throw a baseball more often with less exertion and you can practice your craft and your arm feels good, you're going to pick up a mile or two or whatever. So, there's no quick fix to say, well, we're going to increase velocity here. No, you're going to make them pitch. You want them to pitch, not increase velocity. Whatever velocity, and they will increase it over a period of time, from the beginning of the season all the way through, if they're healthy and making their starts.
Hey, Coach, how we doing? This is Skylar Mead, assistant coach at the University of South Carolina. My question for you is this. What was the specifics of some of your higher profile guys, maybe the Glavins, the Maddoxes, the Averys? What was their throwing routine and their, specifically their mound or spot work routine over the course of a long year? I know you're all's, in between rest days or shorter than us at the collegiate level, but I'm curious just from a, very direct nature, what those guys did and how much they altered maybe over the course of the season and maybe for some of them their career. Thanks, and I'll look forward to hearing your answer.
What they did in the early throwing program and spring training was the same thing we were doing in August, September, and hopefully October. We never changed our routines at no time. No time did we ever change our routine. We were consistent with what we did every day. We didn't back down certain amount of pitches in between. We didn't back down not throwing in between and skipping stuff. The worst thing you can do is get a pitcher out of a routine. You keep a pitcher in his routine from start to finish. As soon as you back somebody down or give them too much rest, then they have to crank it back up again. That's harder on your arm than staying in your own routine. So their routine was to start, take a day off, pitch in between a couple times, take a day off and pitch. Every once in a while, Maddox would tell me, look, I feel great with my pitches. I'm going to do one practice session but it could have been April or it could have been October. That's up to him as an individual, And Glavin, he'd like to throw a lot. He'd like to throw twice in between every once in a while. He'd like to throw the day before. But you were always encouraging the guys to get out on the mound, and nothing changed from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. Consistent with what you do.
Hey, Leo. Dan Drollinger here, pitching coach at Saracosa Community College in Ridgecrest, California. My question for you today is about pitchers' workload. You've long been a proponent of pitchers throwing more, not less, in between outings. My question is, how did you arrive at that philosophy, and has it changed at all in today's game? Thank you very much.
Well, I learned that philosophy from Johnny Sain, who had the greatest success of any pitching coach in the history of the game. And so therefore, when I incorporated his philosophy into my throwing programs and then added my 2 cents to it, because it was based on a 5-man rotation. So that's where I learned that, learned how he could throw more often with less exertion, because he had the most success of any pitching coach in the history of the game. And I came in right behind him over a course of time. But you encourage guys to get on the mound and throw. And the bottom line is you, the coach, have to regulate the effort. You've got to regulate the effort. This program does not work if a coach can't regulate the effort. If you let them just go ahead and start gunning it on every pitch, gunning. What we used to say is this: get them on the mound, maybe you firm up your pitches at the end. It's a great term to use, firm. Firm those pitches up, because they would say to me, well, you're going to run it up when the game starts. I said, you're going to have more adrenaline, but if you firm your pitches up and don't try to go super power and super control, you're going to have success. And so it all starts with what you're communicating with that pitcher in the bullpen sessions. And I hope I've answered your question.
Hey, Leo, this is Chris Fetter, pitching coach at the University of Michigan. Thank you for taking the time to share your wisdom with us. Got to coach 3 of the best to ever throw a baseball in our game with Greg Maddux, John Smoltz, and Tom Glavin. Just a quick question. What separated those guys? Obviously, they have elite level arm talent, but what separated them in terms of their mental preparation, their mental game, and competitiveness on the mound? What separated them from the average? Thank you again for taking the time, and go blue.
Here's what separates the big separated the big 3. They all had the same approach of banging strikes and changing speeds. We're changing movement, change of speeds, but Glavin was very stubborn. Okay, he would not give in to the strike zone. He would not give in to the umpire strike zone. He would not give in to the hitter strike zone. For example, we walked a guy with the bases loaded unintentionally, but we didn't give in to him, and then he retired 18 in a row after that, knowing that if you ever hear a pitcher say, well, I can't walk the guy because the base is loaded. Yes, you can. If you only give up one run, you can, you know. And so Glavin's mindset was very strong-minded. Don't give in, change speeds. And he said to me one time, he said, hitters have egos, and I'm going to take advantage of them. That was his mental approach. John Smoltz came out with a great breaking ball, great fastball. He had a very difficult time throwing a change, so he never trusted his changeup. So I decided that we should go with a split as his third pitch, split finger, because the feel on it wouldn't have to be so difficult. But what I did before I taught Smoltzy that split finger was I went and visited Bruce Sutter. I got in touch with Bruce Sutter and told him to give me all his information on the split, which I passed along to Smoltz, and Smoltzy developed it in a very quick time. And then Smoltzy was he was a great athlete, but he attacked you. And with Maddox, Glavine owned the down and away strike. Maddox owned the down and away strike. Smoltzy owned the down and away strike. Maddox, though, he pitched inside more, but if you watch them pitch, Maddox pitched inside more to lefties than he did. At righties, he was pretty much down and away a lot, and then he would go in with movement. But Maddox would go in more to lefties. He'd go strike one down and away, cutter above the hands, and then the two-seam comebacker to the left-handed hitter. Or if he didn't catch him there, he would go to a changeup. He also threw a lot of right-hand changeups to right-handed hitters as he moved on, adjusted in his career. Glavine, he had trouble with left-handed hitters early in his career until he started throwing his changeup to left-handers just like he would right-handers, which we worked on continuously. Smoltzy was pure stuff, but he ended up with great control. So, and they were always in attack mode. So they were similar, yet they did it in different ways.
Hey Leo, this is Micah Posey at ETSU. The question I had was, you had Maddox, Smoltz, Glavine, some guys with elite mentalities. You always heard the stories of Maddox not wanting to throw a ball above the mask in his bullpen sessions. Can you kind of go into what those guys' mentalities were like in between starts, maybe when the lights weren't so bright, and what went into making them great in their preparation? I appreciate it.
Well, they were the same. They didn't just go lollygag through their practice sessions. They were very intense. Maddox would get upset if he was off by an inch. And Glavine, he would get upset if something didn't feel right. Smoltzy was the same way. Glavine, he could get down those side sessions. He went longer than anybody. Smoltzy, depending on how he felt, would go short or long, and Maddox had the same routine every single time. But it wasn't just going down there and getting your work in. It was going down there, exchanging ideas. A lot of times they were all down there together, including I had them come down when other pitchers threw, especially our younger pitchers, so that they could have some input and then they could exchange ideas. Because a lot of times Bobby would say, "Where's all the pitchers?" I say, "Well, they're down the bullpen with Leo." So therefore, it wasn't just going through but they controlled their effort. This is the key, guys. They controlled their effort, making your pitches. We were 80% was on fastball command, down and away. We wanted to own the down and away strike so that we could pitch inside effectively and selectively. If we didn't own the down and away strike, then it was a hell of a lot harder to pitch inside. If you own the down and away strike, you can expand in quads. You can expand up and away, up and in, down and away. You can expand those pitches. But if you don't own the down and away strike, throw it all out the window. So the fastball command in all our practice sessions was key, under control.
Yeah. So Leo, if you had to choose one pitch, and you had some just ridiculous pitchers, you have Smoltz's slider, Glavine's changeup, Maddox's comeback two-seamer. What do you got?
You got 3 Hall of Famers.
Yeah. That's really hard, isn't it?
Well, you can't. I can't pick one of those because Maddox's comebacker was awesome. Smoltzy's breaking ball was awesome. Glavine's fastball and changeup was awesome. But it all comes off one thing, guys: fastball command. And all 3 of them were well above average with fastball command. And they were well above average in this game was about, all they cared about was making pitches. If you notice, they weren't crazy about the running game. Their game was to make pitches. I had one time where we're going to play Cincinnati before we played Cleveland in the World Series, and we were underdogs to Cincinnati because of Cincinnati's superior running game. So the writers would come to me and say, Leo, he said, Cincinnati's got a superior running game. What are you doing to stop it? I said, well, we're down the bullpen working. He goes, well, are you working on any pickoff, different moves or timing plays at second or first, whatever, da-da-da-da-da-da. I said, no, we're down in the bullpen working on making pitches. They said, well, what about the running game? I said, if we make our pitches, there isn't any running game. I said, the last I heard you can't steal first. You know? And they, guess what? There wasn't no running game.
So you said you're big on learning from pitchers as well as, I mean, obviously you're communicating with them, but the big thing is listening. What was the biggest thing you've learned from the big three, each one individually? What did you learn from Maddox? What did you take from Smoltz, and what did you take from Glavine?
Well, I think one time Smoltz started a game in his mind. Show you the mindset, how smart these guys. Smoltz started a game in Cincinnati, right? This is during the regular season because we knew we were going to play him in the playoffs probably. He started out with 32 straight fastballs. And Bobby Cox looked at me and goes, well, I guess this is going to be a fastball day, huh, Leo? So Smoltz, I come in, and Smoltz getting him out. I come in and he said, Smoltz. I said, what the hell are you doing? I said, well, that's 32 straight fastballs. He goes, yeah, I'm setting them up for the playoffs. And I went, okay. And then with Glavine, one time I went out to the mound and Tommy had trouble with Kevin Mitchell. Remember, Kevin Mitchell was a big power hitter, and it was the bases loaded and 2 outs. So I went out to the mound. And I said, Tommy, no, I want you to pitch to Mitchell just like there was nobody on. I said, because you got a base open. And he looked at me, he goes, I don't know what the hell game you're looking at. He goes, but last I looked, the bases were loaded. He said, would you mind telling me what's open? I said, yeah, home plate. And he looked at me and he said, don't give in, right, Leo? I said, don't give in. He threw a 3-2 changeup lower than low, and Mitchell took it for ball 4. The run scores, right? He retired 18 in a row and won the game 5-2. Maddox, one time we had just to give you good examples, one time we had a situation where he went to Bobby Cox and told him, he says, look, I can't, Louis Gonzalez of Arizona owned him. He could not get him out. And Bobby refused to have Maddox walk anybody because there's nobody we thought he couldn't get out. We told Bobby if the game was on the line to go ahead and walk Gonzalez, it was fine with him. That's how much respect that Bobby had for all our pitchers. And, so the game was on the line about the 6th inning, and Bobby goes, well, Leo, he said, there's first base is open. He says, I guess this is the guy. We got to put him on. He said, because he told me to go ahead and put him on if he wanted to. He says, what do you think? I said, I think you should go out to the mound and ask him what he wants to do because he knows better than us what he wants to do. And he goes, you know what? You're right. So he goes out to the mound. Maddox is talking. He goes back in. Bobby looks down, sits down next to me. He goes, wait till you hear this. And I'm leaving some words out. And I said, why, what's going on? What's going on? He goes, well, he said, I went out there to tell him, it's going to walk the guy. And he goes, no, wait a minute. He says, give me 2 pitches. He said, if I get behind in the count, 2 balls and no strikes, I'll put him on. But I think I can pop him up to 3rd. So Bobby goes, Leo, he thinks he can pop him up to 3rd. He said, let's see how this turns out. Well, once he told me that, I knew it was going to be a cutter above the hands, off the plate, and where he'd have to fight the pitch off. He popped the ball up to Chipper in foul territory at 3rd. So those are just, and Steve Avery. Steve Avery was the kind of kid that he was scouting. What he loved to do is warm up and find out what he had and then go from there. And if it wasn't like the scouting report said, he didn't care. He had good stuff. He had good stuff, and it was always in attack mode. But most of the pitchers that we had over that great run had the mindset of going strike one. If we went strike one, we were going to win. We could expand the zone. If we were going 2-1 strikes to balls with our fastball, we were going to dominate the game. As soon as it got to 60-40, there wasn't any 3-up, 3-down innings. So we had simplicity things like that. That was my analytics. Okay, that was the simple part of the game, making sure that we took care of strike one, making sure that we took care of the fastball down and away for a strike. So that everything else would work off that. And we practiced on that all the time. But guess what? We were able to practice with it all the time because we threw more often with less exertion, which got us on the mound more often. And it wasn't only those 3. It was everybody for 15 years.
Kaleb, you have a lot of resources that Leo has given you to study. Which of those resources has been most valuable to you, and why?
Well, besides Leo's cell phone number, I would say the notebook he gave me in the '94 season, where Leo's got a notebook. It's like a college rule notebook with, handwritten notes on every time a guy picked up the ball from Camp Leo to the end of the season, which that year I believe ended a whole lot sooner than normal. But being able to just go through that, I base a lot of our throwing program off of that. Our guys are on the mound their first day of allowed participation for us in the fall. They're on the first day, and another thing is, one of Leo's big sayings is we bring along all our pitches at the same time. So our first bullpen, our guys are throwing fastballs, breaking balls, changeups, everything they got.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different stuff that Leo has taught me that is, very, very valuable. Another thing that, I think a lot of fall college coaches struggle with in the fall is, inter squads, trying to get your guys ready, because then you got that big break in December. What the heck do you do with that? And being able to give my guys resources. One thing Leo always told me was, listen, when you bring in your guys along, as important as pitch count is, so is getting up and getting down. So if you tell a guy, hey, you got 25 pitches a day or 2 innings, whatever, and a guy goes out and throws 2 innings and 12 pitches, you're not sending them back out there for a third inning. You reward that guy, let him sit down, let him be done. And, there's just so many things like that. Rain delays. For every 30 minutes, you subtract an inning. Stuff like that, no inside misses with a lead after the 6th. There's just so many things that he's taught me that we're able to put into play, whether it's throwing programs, mound progression, build up for a season, whatever it may be that I have at my fingertips. But yeah, that notebook will never leave my side. So until he tells me he wants it back.
Kaleb, what is something, and I want to ask Leo a similar question, but Kaleb, what is something, you know so much about his career and about him. What's something that people don't ask him about that they should be asking him about?
Oh, man. I think everybody wants to know about the big 3, right? I mean, that's the first topic of conversation. I mean, you just listen to, 5 different college coaches ask him questions. They could ask him anything in the world, and every single one of them revolved around, Smoltz, Maddox, or Glavine. And at the end of the day, we're not pitchers anymore. I think stuff that people should be asking Leo, and that I ask Leo a lot, is about him, and where he came from. And I think the biggest thing, man, is the humble, the willing to learn, and that's what he's still doing it. There's times whenever I'm sitting there and I'm talking pitch and say, man, maybe I hadn't thought of it that way. And first of all, I think, well, there's no way. But, for Leo to have as much success as he's had, he is incredibly humble, first of all, and obviously generous with his time. But the amount that he cared for his guys is by far and away the biggest thing to me. Just going back to even, the virtual clubhouse for Game 6 of the World Series the other day, Leo just hanging out with his guys, man. And, I think I even put out a tweet talking about this was the most important baseball talk of 2020. Because to me it was, man. And it's so hard for us as coaches right now. We're all trying to figure out a way to get an edge, a way to get a little bit better. And, at the end of the day, man, it's still guys. It's still around ball. It's still around bat. Those guys during that time, man, they were talking about each other's wives, each other's kids, David Justice's son signing with UCLA. Just, they're talking about life. And at the end of the day, Leo did that as good as anybody, being able to get to know his players. And that's not easy to do, man. I mean, when you're a college coach and your livelihood a lot of times depends on the success of 18 to 21, 22-year-olds, sometimes that's tough to do. Sometimes it's not easy getting in the car after a tough loss and to not be bitter, but you got to show back up to that park, willing to go back to battle like Leo did with Avery and being able to talk to those guys and get on their same level and say, listen, I get it. I'm hurting with you, but we're going to go back to war with you. And to me, that's the most important stuff that anybody, especially young pitching coaches like myself, can take away from a Hall of Fame coach, in my opinion.
Leo, what's the motivation? He talks about, your willingness to learn and you want to continue learning. Why? What's the motivation to continue learning for you at this point?
Well, I mean, you listen to, I've heard Coach Harker and Kaleb say a few things and put it in a way that I went, guys thought back and said, I wish I'd have put that in that type of way that they said something, or I learned a couple things that they used on some certain plays or whatever. And I went, well, that sounds good. I like that. I wish I'd had that, stuff like that. But I mean, you're always, you let your mind work for you a little bit, and you're always, I'm not going to just say, okay, well, I know everything now. I've never ever felt that way. I'm sure there's things that I don't know, but what I do feel very strongly about is the reputation that we had for healthy arms. And that's my career. If there's one thing I want everybody to remember about my career was how healthy our pitching staff stayed over that great 14 straight run. And the starting pitchers averaging making 146 of your 162 game scheduled starts over 14 years. I mean, yeah, and maybe like going 500 and some starts without missing one. Those are the things that I'm most proud of. And I locked in so much on the pitching that a lot of things, like I said, I let other coaches in their areas take care of their business. And what I learned in the game was this. There's a lot of, when I first got to the minor leagues, and I'm sure it still goes on a little bit today, I thought everybody worked together to put together a product and get them to the big leagues. And what I found out was coaches jockeying for position to get the credit for this person going to the big leagues. And I watched how this was going on around me, and I said, I don't ever want to be like that. Because you know what? I saw players lose respect for coaches that did that sort of thing. They ain't stupid. They know what's going on. And I kept saying, stay in your own area. If you're running a business or doing whatever you want, stay in your own area. Take care of what you're supposed to take care of. Your other people are going to take care of that. Don't come up to me and say, how come, another coach come up and say, well, are we pitching inside enough? I don't want to hear that. I didn't go over to their coach and say, well, let's see, were we playing that guy the right way? I never said that. I locked in on the pitchers, and that's what I did. And I stayed with them, and that was the way it was.
I mean, I think that's a great life lesson. I think too many people in charge of things want to get all the credit and deflect all the blame.
No question.
And to do the reverse is an art. And it's also, I mean, it's empathy. And I think it helps bring out the best in your players because they know you care, right?
That's no question about it. Well, one of the toughest jobs, we had to get Mike Hampton to enjoy the game again. I mean, and here's what Mike Hampton felt bad because he didn't live up to his contract in Colorado. I told him, I said, well, who's going to? I mean, you're never going to pitch good there. I don't care who he is, and you might get in there for a quick 4-game series and get out, but to play it as your home ballpark, I don't care who you are. You're not pitching good there over a period of time. And so anyway, Hammy was pretty down when we got him in a trade, and I said, I thought to myself, I asked Maddox, I said, what can we do to make him start enjoying himself more? I said, he's embarrassed about his contract, that he had in Colorado. And I said, how do you approach that? And Maddox says, when I have my contract talks to Leo, he said, I say, I am being paid for what I've done, not what I'm about to do. So I went to Hampton. I said, hey, come here. I got something for you. And I said, you don't need to feel bad about that anymore. He goes, why? I said, because let me tell you what Maddox said, And I told him that, and all of a sudden you could see him starting to, I said, so come on, and start enjoying the game again. I said, you were great with Houston and the Mets, and you'll be great again here. I said, so let's get over this crap,
That's awesome. I think that's a great lesson. So looking at historical pitchers and looking at pitchers today, if you had to pick one pitcher back in the day, a competitor or on another team that you maybe didn't play, who would you pick? Who would you have really wanted to coach? And then looking to today, what pitcher stands out to you as somebody that's kind of got it to you?
Right. Man, I don't know about who we faced. You know, I always thought that Kevin Brown was a very intimidating pitcher. But then I got, you know, and then he was nasty. He was nasty on the mound. Kevin Brown would be a guy that, I don't know why it came to mind. It just did. But I'm sure there's a lot of guys I would love to have had the privilege of coaching, you know. And in today's game, you know, I love what Washington did with Scherzer and Strasburg and how they used them. And so, you know, I love Bumgarner, you know, classic left-hander. And I'm sure I'm forgetting people. I love Soroka, the young rookie right-hander for the Braves. Love to be able to work with him and Fried, the left-hander that they have. But I know, you know, there's a lot of pitchers that I got the privilege of coaching in 5 All-Star games and got to know some guys that you would love to have had on your club, you know. And then you got to know a couple. You might not say, well, maybe.
Well,
I never ran into a pitcher that I didn't like, unless he proved me wrong.
What did you take away? How did you enjoy or not enjoy, or what did you take away from your experience in Baltimore?
It's miserable. You know?
So why?
I went because, you know, it was a completely different setup. I mean, I had a great time, and a lot of people don't remember Eric Bedard and Jeremy Guthrie, 2 great kids. Bedard was a 14-15 game winner for 2 years, and Jeremy Guthrie went on to have a great career. Jeremy Guthrie, I got a tremendous amount of satisfaction. Cleveland didn't want him, and we ended up with him in spring training in Baltimore. And I said, and he was throwing good, and I said, Jeremy, how come Cleveland doesn't want you, you know? And he said, well, Leo, he said, did they tell me I'm too smart, that I think too much, and I'm too smart for myself? And I said, you know what, Jeremy? I said, a wise man told me one time, if you can't think, you can't pitch. And I said, I think a smart brain is a wonderful thing. I said, so you're not too smart as far as I'm concerned. Just be yourself. And with Bedard, you know, he was stubborn, and he taught me a thing. He had a fastball that he cut on the outside corner to a right-handed hitter. And I said, you know, Eric, I said, I said, that's a dangerous pitch. He said, they can't hit that pitch, Leo. I said, but if it comes back to the bare zone, you know, I said, I'd rather see that pitch go off the other way. He goes, I'm telling you, they can't hit that pitch. I said, okay, show me. Well, guess what? They couldn't hit it. You know, so if knock yourself out. But it was ownership. You know, the chain of command. The Braves had a great chain of command. It was never broken. Ted Turner, Stan Kasten, John Sherholtz, Bobby Cox, everything, and us working with the minor leagues. In Baltimore, it was, you never knew what the owner was going to do, and you know, players could go and voice their complaints. Well, when that happens, you have no chance.
So was it a matter of, you know, at least in title, upward movement and getting a chance to be a head coach? And what did you learn there that you would give to a kid like Kaleb, saying, hey, as you're going through the process, trying to move up, be on the lookout for this, this, or this?
You mean when I was in Baltimore?
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, you went to Baltimore, and obviously you didn't think it was going to be terrible. That's why you went.
No,
there.
I didn't. I kind of knew as soon as I got there. Once I saw how everything operated, that I went, uh-oh, got my work cut out for me.
So what would you suggest to, you know, like Kaleb, is he goes through his career and tries to move up? Like, what are some things that he should look at that maybe you missed at the time?
Well, I think I went in thinking that I was going to change the culture. And so in trying to change that culture, I kind of got very aggressive. I'll put it that way. Got very aggressive. And I think if I was going to do that now, I think I would have went in without a bang, without a big bang. I would have kind of lowballed everything. And I went the other way. I thought, well, they're bringing me in. And then I went trying too hard to change the culture of the organization. I had no chance, you know. But I think if I had to do it all over again, I would have lowballed that thing a lot more than what I did. And if Kaleb when he goes to another major college, when his run at Furman is done, you know, you try not to go in as I would tell him, don't go in as the big shooter. go in as I was named the top assistant coach of any coach in the history of sports by Sports Illustrated. But by the time I got to Baltimore, when they said who's hot and who's not, I was the not. But anyway, I would go in more low key and low ball everything, as opposed to going in on a high note per se of a background of success, when there's a lot more to it than me just being a pitching coach. You have to have a great organization behind you, and you have to have the support of everybody. And I had that in Atlanta, no question about it. I was blessed to be in Atlanta, and it was a privilege to be there for 15 years. So when you have a chance to really go big time, I mean, that was big time. So, but when you're trying to, jump into a new place, I go in and lowball it.
Who is the hardest hitter to approach? I mean, I know there's a saying where Maddox said Bonds was the easiest hitter to pitch against because if anything ever mattered, just walk him.
Right. He's greatest hitter I've ever seen. Will Clark was another one. In the clutch, Will Clark was as great a hitter as I've ever seen. Barry Bonds was, early in his career with Pittsburgh, we got him out, and we got him out down and away a lot, and then we got away with a few pitches too. When I look back on the playoff game in Pittsburgh, but in San Francisco, there was a coach there that I played ball with in AAA. His name was Tommy Sant, and he was the first base coach in Pittsburgh. Then Bonds left, went to San Francisco. So we were in Pittsburgh. I said, "Hey, Tommy," I said, "tell me a little bit about Bonds." I said, "God almighty, nobody's getting him out anymore." He said, "Well, Leo," he says, "when you go in to play him in San Francisco, check out his batting average and his power numbers." He said, if his batting average is down, he's going to shoot you to left center. If his power numbers are down, he's going to turn and burn. And I went, "He's that good, huh?" He goes, "Yep, he's that good." So we would go over a meeting in San Francisco, and they'd say, "Well, how are you going to pitch Bonds?" I said, "We're going to get the first two guys out that hit in front of him, so we don't have to worry about it." And with nobody on, we pitched to him. Anytime after the sixth, if he was the winning run, the tying or winning run, we didn't. That's how good he was. That's the only hitter that we ever did that with.
What is your take on what happened in the game during the 90s in the steroid era?
Well, I mean, we pitched in that era. How about that's how great our pitching was?
Right. That's kind of where I wanted to go with that.
That's the way I look at it. And here's the thing, when rules are in place, then you don't break the rules. All right. Was there rules in place for steroids when all that stuff started? No. Now there's rules. Okay. Were there rules in place for cheating and technology like that with the cheating scandals last year? No. Now there's rules in place. Okay. So when there's rules in place, then it's wrong. If there's no rules, make the rules before it happens. But
right.
You know what I mean? So if there's no rules, but if there are rules, then it's wrong.
I remember Maddox saying something about the one rule that was in the clubhouse always, or that they preached to you, was no betting in baseball, which is why he drew a line between Pete Rose and Barry Bonds, because they never told you don't do steroids. They never told you don't do all this stuff. But the one rule was no gambling.
Well, that was on a wall in every game of baseball from the time I signed out of high school and went to my first minor league clubhouse. And I never saw a clubhouse that didn't have that up. So,
Well,
but you know what I hope though? I hope they let Pete in. And he's done it. He served his time and all that sort of thing. And I got to know him a little bit, and he's always was very complimentary to me. And I think now it's time, he's been punished enough. I think they should let him in.
What do you think of all the whole cheating scandal in baseball right now? I mean, hasn't everybody always been trying to pick up signs and steal signs?
Yeah, but this is taking it to a whole new level. Now, this technology is taking it to a whole new level. We had fun with it years ago, trying to pick up signs, watching the third base coach to see if he broke his rhythm, if something was on. It isn't exactly what he gave. It was a third base coach has a rhythm, and sometimes third base coaches, once something was on, they would slow that sign down a little bit, whereas going, and you could pick up a rhythm. or, at second base, you're always looking for location, those types of things. But, that was about it. I mean, rumor has it that when we were playing the Twins in the Metrodome, when we were hitting, the flags were blowing in from the air conditioner, and then when they were hitting, they were straight down. And we saw the game in replay in '91, and by damn, we were hitting, it was blowing in a little bit, and then it was straight down.
No way.
I mean, but those things, that was, that's baseball. I mean, but this other stuff, technology and stealing the signs, and somebody hired those, in the clubhouse watching. I don't like that. I think that's too much, and I don't think that needs to be a part of the game. And I think they've addressed it, and I think you ain't going to see it no more.
Barry Bonds, the Hall of Famer, right? I mean,
no question. So is Roger Clemens. There's another pitcher that he was awesome.
Now I was thinking Pedro was a pitcher that I would have given anything to.
Awesome. Awesome. I mean, and smart. There's one thing, you talk to people like the guys I'm talking about that went in the Hall of Famer. I used to go to Don Sutton. One time Avery was having trouble and I wasn't getting through. So I asked Don Sutton to come down to the bullpen with me and watch Avery with his side sessions and see if he saw anything that I didn't. And he goes, "You want me to come down there?" I said, "Well, you won 300 and some games. Yeah." And he was tickled to death to be able to do that. I said, "Why not take advantage of the tools that you have available to you?" And I had Jim Palmer do the same thing in Baltimore. Matter of fact, I had Jim Palmer spy for me when we were playing the Orioles, and I was working with Kevin Millwood in the bullpen. There's another great story, Kevin Millwood. I mean, good young pitcher, had a great career, pitched a long time. Kent Merker, 17 years. Mike Stanton, 17 years. On all these guys, you know what? Kent Merker in 1994 he was his very first start. It was in LA. He was the fifth man in the rotation. So now he has to start in LA. He's got a no-hitter after 6 in LA. He comes in and goes, "I'm getting a little tired." I said, "What the hell's wrong with you? Look up on the scoreboard." Look up on the scoreboard. He goes, "Oh." I said, "Yeah, oh." He goes, "I ain't tired no more." He went 9 innings, threw his no-hitter, threw 129, 130 pitches. In his very first start of the year. He only pitched 17 years after that.
He was part of like a 5-man no-hitter later in his career, wasn't he?
Yeah. Yeah. He was a guy. I used to have a saying with the pitchers, you give up 4 solo home runs in a game and you're still going to go 9. Merker had given up 3 after 6 innings. He says, "I think I'm taking your theory a little too far." And I said, "No, you got one more left."
Kaleb, J.C. Bradbury wrote a book, and in there was a section about Leo Mazzone, and it really provided almost the scientific evidence that Leo's methods worked across the board. It wasn't just about having great pitchers.
Right.
What if you take away those big 3, and if you've noticed, Leo, I've made a conscious effort not to say any of those names today. If you take away those guys, what, Kaleb, makes him the greatest pitching coach of all time?
Well, I mean, obviously he's talked a lot about some of these other guys with, Merker and Avery and all these guys that have had success, guys that didn't have success at places they came from and didn't have success with Leo. I mean, the biggest thing, and Leo's already said it, is just the health. I mean, in a world where, listen, today it's 2020. Everybody asks a question about Tommy John surgeries and labrum surgeries. In 2050, everybody's going to be asking the same questions. And they were asking them in 1992, and Leo's stuff works. It keeps your guys healthy. I mean, to me, that's the most important thing. You can't win, you can't develop, you can't coach if your guys can't throw. And so to me, that's just, it's the most important thing. It's, in my mind, what drew me to him initially. Obviously I knew who he was because of all the success he had in correlation with those 3 guys. But at the same time, when I met Leo, I was very frustrated with, I'd only been coaching for maybe 5 years, but hadn't had a ton of success. Guys are getting hurt left and right. Just very frustrated at the way the game was going, very frustrated at the way my career was going. And being able to talk with Leo and say, listen, this guy's, all his knowledge and it's not too far away from where I'm thinking. It's just, I got to be able to incorporate it and be able to coach it the right way, and controlling the effort and getting the guys on the mound and forcing them to control the effort. And there's times when I've had to just kick guys off their session because they don't control the effort. But stuff like that is just, to me, it's a no-brainer. Being able to keep your guys healthy, man, it's just that, you know, in college baseball, you only have 11.7 scholarships if you're fully funded. And only 27 of those guys are going to be on scholarship if you're putting all 27 on scholarship. You know, so you're having to split hairs and bring in who you can bring in. I mean, you can't afford to have your top 3 or 4 guys not play for you. And so at this level, to be able to say, all right, well, I think I've got a leg up on everybody in the country at keeping my top 3. Now, my top 3 might not match up with your top 3, but if your top 3, if only half of them are playing, then I'll take my 3 guys, you know? And so for me, I just think that gives me a leg up.
The big takeaway I'm getting from this, and this is a credit to you, Kaleb, and a credit to you, Leo, is the ability to listen not only to your players, but listen to other people who have done it, and not think that you have too big an ego to think you have all the answers, but instead to bring in the best. I mean, to take advice from Don Sutton, to take advice from Jim Palmer, Kaleb taking advice from Leo. I think too many coaches are full with pride. They want to think they did it themselves. Too many players want to do it themselves. And that's my takeaway from this, is that to be successful, sometimes you have to listen instead of talk.
No question. And here's the thing too. I've been around where I've worked, talked to a group of pitchers, and the pitching coach was there, and I got done my spoo, and, you know, it was asking and asked questions and everything. And then when I was walking away, the coach didn't think I heard him. You know what he said? He said, "Okay, we heard what he had to say. Now we're going to go do it our way." And I couldn't believe it. I didn't say nothing. I just left. You know, I thought you're a clown. You're a clown. You know. And the other thing is, what all the pitchers used to tell me when they were they always said thanks for one thing, and I kept hearing this all the time. They would say, "Thank you for simplifying the game for me. Thank you for simplifying the game." And that's and that's what I've been trying to, all that information I give Kaleb is simplifying the game, not making it so difficult, you know. And because if you do this, the normal things that we talk about on this program, that's about as simple as you can get, but executing that simplicity is a little different. But what's Kaleb, right? You can't execute the simplicity if you can't get on the mound and throw.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our big thing here is, first of all, Coach Harker, our head coach, he's a pitching guy. I mean, pitching.
Right.
Charleston was drafted by the Phillies, was the first ever junior drafted out of College of Charleston. And so when he got the head job and interviewed me, he was like, "Man, I don't know what else to do. I'm still working with pitchers." And I said, "Harker, I mean, I want you to. I don't really care if we got this guy and he throws 100 innings with a 3 ERA, if he did that because of me or because of you or because, Joe Schmo came down and said something to him that clicked. I don't care. At the end of the day, our number one goal is the development of the name on the back of the jersey and not the one on the front. And if I can get information from anybody that helps my guys, that's what we're going to do. And so, getting on the mound and being able to go to work with these guys, I mean, that's by far and away, the biggest thing that we can do, is one of the biggest things that I've taken away from Leo. And he, his resources have been unbelievable.
Leo, if you were a journalist and you got to interview Leo Mazzone, okay, what's a question maybe that people, or you're not asked about much, that you feel like, hey, I could really give you a story or give you an education in this area?
Wow, I think we're doing it right now.
That's it, really?
Yeah, I think we're doing it right now. I mean, everybody want to know why I rocked all the time, but that's just something I did when I was a kid in a high chair, beating my back of my head up against the wall, and that explains a lot.
I think that's a compliment, Rob. I think we got a compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think we're talking about it right now. So, I mean, there's not one specific thing. It's I think a lot of people don't realize I spent 24 years in the minor leagues, and then I had 18 in the big leagues, and ended up pitching in Mexico and coaching every league you can possibly coach in, pitching all the way up through AAA and getting close to the big leagues. There just wasn't no room with the Oakland A's at that time during their World Championship years. I couldn't break that staff. And they said, how can you stand being in the minor leagues 24 years? How could you do that? You know how I could do it? Because I loved it. I loved every minute of it. I coached with as much passion to the kids in A ball as I did in the big leagues. There was nothing changed from A ball to the 7th game of the World Series in my consistency, in my approach, except I got smarter. But my consistency, my approach is the same.
Do you think the quality of the game today is better or worse than it was in the 90s, 80s, 90s?
I don't think it's as good. Because there's two things now that baseball is going to: how hard you can throw it and how far you can hit it, and that's it. My biggest thrill now in the game is when I see somebody like Freddie Freeman take advantage of the shift and hit a base hit to left. I asked the minor league hitting coach one time. I said, "How come nobody hits the opposite way on a shift?" I said, "The whole left side's open. I don't understand that." I said, "Don't you?" And he goes, "Well, in the minor leagues, we're told not to do that because we don't want to mess with his swing." I said, "In the minor leagues, don't you teach everybody to use the whole field?" I mean, come on, give me a break. I mean, there's a lot of people in the game that are running the game now that never played the game. When I was coaching and when I was in the minor leagues and when I was a pitcher, it was all people that had played the game, and most of them had been in the big leagues or had played the game a long time. So, yeah, I don't think it's as good now because the fundamentals, this is just how the strikeouts are ridiculous. How far you can hit it is, it's just it's a different game. But I had somebody say, "We think your guys could pitch in today's era?" I said, "What?" I said, "We'd never give up a run." But, if that's the way to, I still love watching the games, and especially when the money's on the line. I love watching them. Or that's why I like Soroka so much. Move the ball around, change speeds. Looks like he's hardly working when he's out there pitching. It's stuff like that. But I don't like the square in the strike zone. How about this? Watching those games, those World Series games that the Fox Sports South has put on for everybody, and the old TBS games, which TBS to me was one of the most wonderful things that ever happened to me in my career. No analytics, just calling the game, talking about baseball. Joe Morgan or a Jim Palmer or Bob Uecker or a Al Michaels or a Bob Costas broadcasting the game of baseball. And they're talking about the game of baseball. They're not talking about that ball got out at 97 miles an hour with an arrow drawn here and the strike zone here and this, that. I can't stand it. I don't like it. I know it's part of the game now, but and there is a part, and please don't get me wrong, there is a part of the game for analytics, but you can't eliminate what we just described for the last couple hours, because it doesn't matter if you can't command a fastball for a pitcher. And the game has never changed. If you can't throw a good fastball as a pitcher and command it, and a hitter can't hit a good fastball, you're in trouble.
It's kind of like being a good jazz musician or something like that. I can hit all the keys, but if I don't have feel, you can tell. And I think just being able to hit the numbers, if you're all mechanical and you don't have feel for the game, I think you can tell, and you're not going to be as successful.
Right. And speaking of mechanical, we work on mechanics all the time, good, proper mechanics for delivering a pitch. But here's what we had too. Once the game starts, mechanics stop. Now it's about getting somebody out, about making pitches. But when we're down in the bullpen, our number one priority is making our pitch. Now, if there's a mechanical adjustment to be made to make our pitch more consistent, we will make that adjustment in the bullpen. Okay? And then once the game starts, mechanics stop.
I think pitchers get crippled sometimes by that, or use it as a crutch. I mean, sometimes it's an excuse like, "Oh, it was my mechanics," when you weren't competing out there. So there's a time to just switch on and be a competitor, is what you're saying.
Well, what I'm saying is that you can't be thinking about your mechanics when you're trying to get somebody out.
Yeah.
You're trying to make pitches, and that's called focus. That's locking in on what you're supposed to do. And if you've done well in your side sessions with your mechanics, ain't nothing going to go haywire. Here's where mechanics go haywire. If you start to overthrow, here's where they go haywire. At some point in time, and I tell this to kids, college kids, professional pitchers, you're going to face some adversity in the game. At some point in time, you're going to face adversity in the game. If you resort to superpower or you resort to super control, you're not going to have any damage control. You're going to get knocked out. Superpower is going to get you up in the zone. You raise the risk of arm injury. That super control is going to get you behind in the count. So both those things don't add up. Then you're going to try to blow to get out of this trouble. Now you have raised the risk of arm injury, and now you don't have like a damage control inning. Giving up one, you're giving up 3 or 4, and you're gone. So you have to impress on them that sneaky quick is much more important with location than superpower without it.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where, so today's analytics, it can tell you a lot of things, but it doesn't tell you deception and kind of that sneaky quick thing. It may tell you spin rate and stuff like that, but it still can't really measure deception of mechanics and stuff. The only thing you can tell is how the hitter reacts.
Right. Yeah. Well, they used to tell us that, hitter's going to tell you, a reaction hitter's going to tell you how good your pitch is. But, in other words, the deception on Glavitt's changeup is unbelievable. You can't see any difference in a fastball and a changeup with his arm speed at all. And what I like on spins is standing behind the pitcher and make sure that a 4-seam backspin is consistent. Make sure that a 2-seam over the top spin is consistent. Make sure that changing the direction of the ball for a breaking ball is consistent, the spin. Changeups, the consistency of the spin. So that's what I look for. I want the spins to be the same. In other words, I don't want a pitcher coming to me and the ball cut, right? Say the ball cut. And I always ask them, did you do that on purpose? No. Well, then that means it's only going to be a 50-50 pitch. Let's find out why it cut. And if you want to cut one, let's cut that one on a regular basis or straight on a regular basis. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And those are spins.
Rob, I'll just interject a little bit. I think, we have Rapsodo in our indoor facility for our pitchers. And I think what Leo said right there, that's how you use that stuff, in my opinion, is it uses it as a supplement to teach what you're already teaching. When a kid bogs down, just like, hey, let's figure out why. I mean, why is the biggest thing. So many coaches coach with the what without the why, and so there's no how, and kids just get all they see is numbers, spin rates, axis, all this stuff, and it's just they kind of get bogged down a little bit. But when I could tell, all right, well, that one cut, but we didn't want it to. Well, here's why. So now we can figure out, maybe we shape a pitch or we just move on from it and figure out how to prevent it moving forward, but we don't coach our whole session on a computer screen. And I think that's a big thing for us.
I think that's a great point. I think too many coaches, it ends up being a crutch. You don't ask the why, and you're afraid to be asked the why. So it's a lot of coaches, they want to dictate things, but they're afraid to actually have a conversation with a pitcher and get challenged. Sometimes a pitcher will say, hey, why are we doing this?
Sure. And I'll tell my guys at the beginning of the fall, even my recruits, I say the biggest thing that you can do for me as a player is ask me why. Because if I can't explain it to you, then you shouldn't expect to be able to do it. And like I tell my guys all the time, listen, when you come in, I have expectations for you. You should have expectations for me as your coach as well. And so, if kids aren't asking why, then I'll start asking them why they aren't asking why. There's no way you understand everything that I'm saying all the time, 100% of the time, because I'm not that good. I'm going to mess something up, mess the wording of something up, and I need you to, second guess it. Ask me why and help me explain it. This stuff that we do right here even helps me understand what I'm doing just talking about it. And so when you can talk about it with a player, again, and listen to what they're having to say and their concerns with it, then you can start seeing the ice get broke a little bit and the development starts to happen right in front of you.
And they're taking ownership of their own career. Same thing we were talking about earlier with calling pitches and stuff. If a pitcher takes ownership of development and their game plan, then you're going to be successful. If they're if they have it dictated to them, I think you're going to be less successful.
I agree. I mean, some of this stuff that I see calling pitches. I want to give you one about calling pitches. I'll give you an example. I love, like Kaleb said, the why. One time we had a game against Cincinnati. So Maddox and I are in the dugout before he's going out to warm up. He goes, okay, Leo, question for you. He used to do this to me all the time. Game's on the line. Who do I pitch to, Reggie Sanders or Willie Green? Reggie Sanders is right-handed. Willie Green's a switch here. He's going to hit left-handed. And I looked at him and I said, Willie Green. He goes, why? And I said, Reggie Sanders he says, because Reggie Sanders swings and misses a lot, Leo. I said, yeah, but he swings and misses a lot on pitchers that pitch north and south. I said, you pitch east and west. I said, and Reggie Sanders can't hit your comebacker, he can't hit your sinker, he can't hit your changeup, he can't hit your cutter. I said, does that answer your question? He goes, yeah. And so he asked another coach the same thing. He goes, I do whatever you want. Well, he didn't, he didn't like that, We're going down the bullpen. I said, hey, who did you pick? Who did you pick? He goes, Willie Green. The other thing was this pitch, calling pitches. Number one, I never called one pitch in my life, whether it was the minor leagues or the big leagues, or when I was pitching, nobody ever called a pitch for me in my life. I'm calling my game, okay? But there's times when you need some help. But I can't believe I saw a game. I'm sitting in the dugout, and I was looking over at the other side in a particular college game, and there's these 3 signs up. They're putting cards up in the dugout. Each card has a number on it. And then I see the pitcher look into the dugout and look at the cards, then look on his wrist, and then throw the pitch. And I said, you got to be kidding me. I'm also seeing now in the big leagues, catchers with wristbands on, pulling their sleeve up and looking at those bands while pitch calling pitches. And I'm thinking, you got to be kidding me, what's going on, and I think that's totally ridiculous. And that's when analytics goes too far. That's when all that BS goes too far. You got to have a feel for that. All should have been taken care of in your team meetings prior to the games, and taken care of with what you were executing in the bullpen on your side sessions. And that should be taken care of. And you should know what you want to throw and what you don't want to throw. You should not have to look at a wristband or look at a card in a dugout and figure out what do you want to throw. You shouldn't have to look on your wristband and say, where do I play this guy? Give me a break. That's all taken care of prior to the game.
That's laughing. Speaking of analytics, I remember from Pedro's book, him talking about, they gave him a big book of analytics saying, this is why we're going to pay you this much. This is what you've done. This is what, and he said, it doesn't tell you that I had a heart of a lion, that we're not just robots out there. We actually compete. We're faced with all this stuff. And that's where the rubber meets the road. You can have all these analytics sometimes, but you don't have the feel for it.
Yeah, no question about it. I think that, and there's another pitcher I like Verlander a lot too, and I think that he kind of fits that same mold that you're talking about.
You have any Marvin Freeman stories? Because Marvin's going to probably watch this. He's big on Twitter.
Who, Marvin?
Yeah.
Marvin was great. He had a great sinker, and it turned into he turned into one of the better setup men that helped us a great deal to get us to the postseason. I love being around Marvin. He was a good humor guy, had nasty stuff, and had a nasty arm angle, and he could make the bottom fall out of that thing. And we had a lot of fun together. We laughed like crazy, and he does a good job now coaching himself.
Why aren't you coaching? You can still coach. It sounds like you still got that passion.
Nobody. Everybody's too intimidated.
Yes,
Well, it goes back to Johnny Sain.
One time I asked John Smoltz, I said, how come nobody wants to knock down my door? And he said, Leo, I said, did I do something wrong? He goes, no, you didn't do anything wrong. He said, I'm going to tell you why. He says, an organization is going to call you and say, we want you to come in. Here's what we want you to do. And he says, I know who you are and what you're like. He said, and you're going to say, well, if you're bringing me in, we're going to do what I want to do. He said, they're not going to do that. So that's, if that's the way they want, I mean, I'm fine with, I accomplished everything that I wanted to accomplish in the game and got to realize all my childhood dreams. So,
Leo, I want you to talk, you and I have talked a lot about this, but I want you to hit on pitch count for a second. I know you and I talk a lot about what high pitch count is, what it isn't,
Right.
Rest pitching being the big indicator of it, and then, of course, you keeping your own pitch count.
Well, the bottom line is that Bobby Cox and I had a max out inning. We called it a max out inning. And so the max out inning was that if pitcher was going out to the mound in, say, the 6th or 7th, he was going to max out his effort, then he was done after that inning, regardless of the pitch count. And if he wasn't going to max out his effort, then he wasn't done, regardless of the pitch count. So therefore, the pitch count was something that wasn't as important as maxing out your effort during the game. And that's what people have to understand when it comes to this pitch count number. And before the pitch counts went up on the wall, I should cheat on my clicker a little bit, I mean, Glavine to throw a first pitch changeup, the guy pop it up. I said, I ain't counting that, So it got to be a joke in the with Bobby. He goes, Leo, how many's he got? And I'd tell him the number. And he goes, is that the real number? Or is it yours? And I said, no, that's the real number. Of course, Anyway, so our pitch counts, we kept them, but that didn't determine who was how long the guy was going to pitch. It was the max out inning, or how hard was it to get through 5 or 6, or did he get through it in easy fashion? Did he have to pitch out of jams? All this you take into account. You're just going to say, well, he's got 100 pitches now, I got to take him out, And so that never happened where we were. And with the manager making the pitchers the first-class citizens of your club, that made my job easier too, because there's a lot of managers that just doesn't happen. I said, okay, and I have it with Bobby Cox, and Kaleb has it with Coach Harker.
So what else goes into that? I'm curious. I love that philosophy of pitchers being first-class citizens. What other things go into that in the way you treat?
Well,
pitchers?
what first-class citizens are this? You go to spring training, right? No, pitchers don't have to shag. No shagging. You do your work, you do your running, you get done, you're done. Go on, leave the park. Okay, you're rewarded for doing everything in an efficient manner and doing it the right way. And if they know they can get out of there in the right way and play a little golf, they're going to do it right. And so, in other words, I heard managers when I was on clubs that said, "Get the pitchers out of the way so we can get some work done around here. Get those knuckleheads on field too," or And I'd sit there and go, well, that's a lousy way to approach that. Number one, we're not knuckleheads, and number two, why you want to get us out of the way? Because you get us out of the way, you ain't winning. And you know what? Those managers that said that never won. They never won. And I studied the game of history of the game. I'm going to tell you that they never won. But Bobby Cox, when he come in and says, "I'm making pitching the top priority," we're going to turn an offensive-oriented organization into a pitching one. And then so there's no shagging, there's no eyewash. You know what eyewash is? We're working hard. Look at all of them. They're sitting out there, standing out there at the yards 2 hours ago. You know what you do when you stand out there and shag? You ache like the son of a gun. You get stiff as a board. You feel like crap, and you're just sitting there. Once you get your work done, you're done. Why does there have to be a time on it? So that's what that other stuff's a joke. How about running everybody in the ground, then putting them on the mound after that? That's a joke. You got to have them pitch off the mound before you do any type of running program. And then they used to say to me, "How many you want us to run?" I said, "Just run it up. How much you think you should run?" And I said, "Don't cheat yourself."
Get him, Kaleb. What's another one, Kaleb? Get him.
No, I wanted him to get on that because I knew that was going to get him. But we do the same thing. I mean, we talk about it all the time. It's just, if a guy doesn't pitch out of the stretch for 4 straight innings, but his pitch count, I'm not pulling him, but I mean, there's just such a big difference between, constantly pitching with a guy on second and pitching out of the windup with nobody on base. Your pitch counts could be the same, but your exertion's completely different. So I just think you got to be mindful of those things. There's so many things other than just, it's not so always black and white. Here's the number. This is where he's at. It's just not the case. I mean, you got to be able to watch the game and be a student of the game. So, and I mean, Leo taught me that. Before I met Leo, I was, all right, click, and this is where we're at. So he must be tired. Let's get him out of there, rather than watching the game and paying attention. Is one reason why, I keep my own pitching chart just so I don't give that to anybody else. I do that just so I can make sure I know where my guys are. It's my little clicker, but on paper.
Love it. Rob, you got anything more?
Oh, I think this has been great.
Right.
I mean, this is
Me
fantastic.
too. It's been awesome. I appreciate you guys having me on. I really do. I love talking baseball. I love talking pitching, and it was my whole life from the time I was 9 years old. So, and to be able to realize all your childhood dreams was a wonderful career. So thanks.
I want to share a story with you real quick because everybody, the accolades you have and everything's all about pitching in Major League Baseball. So I just want to share a quick story with you before you go. My dad, the first memory I have with my dad actually was, I don't know, I must have been like 4. And I don't remember. I just know we were staying up late. He and my mom were divorced, and he always let me stay up late to watch baseball games. And we always watched the Braves on TBS. He was really sick. I knew he was terminally sick for a long time. And he spent really everything that he had left on trying to create memories with his kids. And I remember that the common bond between us was the Braves. And that was because of how good you guys were, and you were on TV, and you were obviously a big part of that. And he ended up dying a couple years after you guys had won the World Series. But to this day, when I think about my father, I think about standing literally like on top of your dugout in '95 when you guys won the World Series. And I think I'm just one of tens of thousands of kids out there who what you did had nothing to do with baseball. It was a father-son relationship builder, right, and bond, and something that, like, my dad's in the grave, but that's what I remember. I have a thing of our pictures from the World Series in '92 and in '95 and our ticket stubs and following you to the Marlins and all of that stuff. I mean, what you guys did was so far beyond baseball for a lot of us. And I want to say thank you for that personally. And I think that hopefully you know that it goes way beyond baseball.
Well, I do everywhere I've gone. The people that the accolades that everybody got. Everybody, TBS was wonderful. It brought us to everybody's home. And my dad's in his grave too, and he's got a Braves uniform top on. Yeah. But he get in the car and go wherever, just drive wherever we were playing, And he coached me from Little League up through Pony League, American Legion ball, semi-pro ball, and got off work at the paper mill and would come down and catch me every night at the ballpark.
Well, I thank you for that. And Kaleb, thanks so much, man, for making this happen, being the brains behind it all, as your buddy said. Made sure everybody knew on Twitter. So
you all got me tearing up and stuff, man. Josh.
Yeah, that's the goal, is to get right.
Yeah, thanks, man.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Take care.
Take care.